Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Broke Up, Not Broken. If you're going through a divorce, don't worry, you're not alone. This is your one-stop shop for mastering your life and your finances as you go through the entire divorce process. Today, I'm thrilled to have Kat Newport, author of Smart Conflict, Turning Disputes into Growth Opportunities, joining us. Kat is an expert in conflict resolution, helping individuals and businesses alike to transform disputes into chances for growth. So today she's here to share her insights on navigating financial conflicts during a divorce and how these challenges can actually lead to better understanding and personal development. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by your divorce or your current station in life, don't be. Kat is here to help us break it down so you can feel confident and prepared by creating a clear picture of not only your financial situation, but how you can tackle the personal challenges that you might be facing as well. So grab a cup of coffee or your beverage of choice, buckle up, and let's once again get you personally and financially empowered. Kat, it's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamie.
Yes. So the conflict resolution is one of the things that I preach in the work that I do as a divorce financial planner with my company. How did you get into this line of work? Because it fascinates me that how to get people from point A to point B in an amicable way and all the little nuances that go along with it. So I'd love to hear your story here.
Quote the Beatles, it was a long and winding road. Um, I just dated myself. Anyway, so when I first started in corporate many moons ago, I really, really sucked at conflict management. And this turned up in my first marriage. So it became a bit of a passion project for me right from the outset. How do you deal with conflict and still get to where you're going and preserve the relationships as you're going there?
Mm.
So that manifested itself not only in my corporate job, but it then became something that I looked at in my personal life. So I'm a conflict coach, I'm a mediator, I'm a conflict educator. I deal with estate, pre and post bereavement, conflict and negotiations and that kind of thing. So it became, like I said, just this fascination with it, which eventually led to Smart Conflict.
Awesome. So in your book, which I've done, I didn't read the whole thing, but I've been doing some perusing here, and I want you to, this is a commercial for your book here. So how do you discuss turning some of the disputes that arise into growth opportunities, right? So how can divorcing couples navigate the financial disputes that they're up against? How to do that in the most constructive way?
So when you're looking at these disputes and you're looking at your finances, applying SMART becomes very important. SMART is actually an acronym. And the first thing you need to know is the S part, which is understand your situation. Know what situation you find yourself in. Not they did this or they did that, or I want this and I want the moon, or no, they can't have that. You really have to get super clear on exactly what situation you're in and exactly what that means to you and your former partner. So it goes well beyond that superficial piece. You got to get really deep on knowing. So that would be step number one. Step number two is measure those emotions. When you have divorce, you've automatically got a huge emotional load. You add money on top of that, you've got a powder keg. So
Mm.
we've got all these internal narratives that go along with that you really have to sit down and figure out for yourself before you engage with your partner, because this is something you carry personally.
And this is one of the first exercises we take all of our clients through as we're beginning the divorce financial planning process is kind of this exercise. And I didn't even know we were really doing this, but we have everybody create what's called a My Priorities worksheet and go through that exercise. And my experience is from a high level perspective, there's really three key areas. There's what do we want to have happen with the kids? What do we want to have happen with the house? And then what do we want to have happen with the other financial aspects of our lives? And what are some of the things that are most important to us? So walking them through that exercise, we have them do it both for themselves and for their spouse. And I think having them take a beat and jotting that down and just saying, okay, he's going to want to make sure we have joint custody, or she's going to want to make sure we have joint custody. I would like to keep the house. He would like to sell it, so on and so forth. That I think that helps prompt some of these discussions. So how, going through that exercise, how would you, interject that in some of the conflict mediation that you do? Are we going down the right path with this? I would say, is there anything else you would add to that we can learn from you?
People in my head are just cheering you on from the background. This is an agenda, right? This is an agenda of where we want to be in a conflict. So that's the A of smart conflict, is having a mending agenda. A lot of us get into conflicts not really knowing what we want to get out of it. So having an eye on what the future should look like or what you want it to look like is super important. And the second thing my little people stood up and waved the flags about is acting with empathy. By
Mm.
taking that beat, by looking at it from your former partner's perspective, you're giving yourself a chance to open up that purview, and you're acting from the heart. You're acting with the relationship in mind. Even though the relationship is ending, if you have children in particular, this person's going to be in your life for a very long time.
Mm. And I think the other aspect of that too, just to add on to what you're saying there, is understanding what the other side is looking for as well. Because we have them do that, for themselves, but also for the other side, getting understanding what the other side is thinking, what they may want. I would eventually guess that's going to help bridge the gap.
Precisely. This is about understanding what your boundaries are, the drop dead boundaries that I will never ever give this up, but understanding that I want these, but I can definitely negotiate these. So
Mm.
really understanding what is core and fundamentally important to you, and not everything is core and fundamentally important to you. Understanding what's core and fundamentally important and what you're willing to give and take on so that you can find a mutually agreeable way forward.
Awesome. And I've seen this happen in a few, because I do divorce mediation, and I see this happen not a lot, but sometimes, because mediation is designed, as I think you would agree, for two sides to come together in an amicable way. In my world, I tell people all the time, like, if you can't be in the same room with one another, this is probably not going to go well. Right. We can get through some of it. We're probably not going to be able to get all of it done, but financial conflicts typically impact the relationship that they had. It starts off well and then starts to fizzle off, kind of like deteriorate over the process of mediation. So what strategies do you suggest for minimizing the conflicts as people are going through divorce? Because I know almost every state will put you through mediation. Right. I don't really know of any state that won't actually ask you to go through mediation before your divorce is finalized, before you get to step into the courtroom. So how do you handle the conflicts? And this take your time with this. This could be a 10-minute answer to this, but as the breakdown of the relationship, or the conversation start to deteriorate, how do you handle that? How do you ensure that, like, the relationship still stays intact?
So there's a couple of things that sort of popped into the head as you're describing this situation. So the first one is you're responsible for your own emotions.
Mm.
Number one, it's not up to your former partner to make you feel better. That's your job. Well, the situation and the events and everything that's unrolling is going to impact your emotions, and your emotions are perfectly valid. They are completely right. It's not the job of your former partner to soothe that. It's not the job of your lawyer to soothe that. And when you step into the court, don't even bother. You're going to lose that control completely.
Yeah. Anything else to add?
Oh, absolutely. So there's that emotional piece. There's also getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mm.
You're going to have to sit with it. I when I'm in mediations, I like to describe it as a bell curve. You come in totally calm, yeah, we're going to be fine with this, and then there's going to be a spike in emotion when you really start talking about things that are uncomfortable. And the most successful mediations, in my experience, have been the ones where you can white knuckle through the roller coaster of getting up to the top of the bell curve to hit those really impactful topics, to slide down the other side into into a mutually agreeable solution. So get used to being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And the third thing that came to mind is seek support, the right support. Mutual friends and venting about your partner to what used to be mutual friends or still is mutual friends, probably not in your best interest. Venting to your mother-in-law, probably not your best interest. So find the right support network that can give you a arm's distance or objective view of what you're going through, and can support you emotionally through that. And that will help as well without getting any extra drama or emotion tangled up in it.
Yeah. I call it creating team you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to surround yourself with as many people as you can to support you. You know, the love your loved ones, your divorce financial planner, your CPA, your attorney, whoever. You know, like create that team you and put that support system in place. One of the things that came to mind as you're speaking there is I see this happen a lot in mediations where one side is not necessarily trying to appease the other person, but maybe they're just trying to get through the exercise, or maybe they're white knuckling this so much on that roller coaster you just talked about that they just agree to everything. Like, oh yeah, no problem, Kat, you can have that thing. No problem, Kat. I don't really care about this thing. I don't really care about this happened in a conversation this week. Husband and wife, really cool couple. As we started going through the laundry list of things, it was the personal belongings we were talking about, and we even got down to the pets, and he was giving her everything. Just, yeah, nope, doesn't matter to me. Is that a good sign? Is that a bad sign? How do you handle that? What are, if listeners are playing that role, what are some of the pitfalls that are associated with it, if there are any?
In the book, I actually call this the emotional backpack. You're taking on more emotional work than is actually yours to carry. I'm going to have to be uncomfortable in the process too. But if you're giving me everything, you're trying to make me comfortable. You're trying to manage my emotions. That's not your job. So this is a burden backpack. You're just carrying too much stuff. Can this lead to things in the future? Absolutely. There's a sense of loss. There could be a sense of resentment, and that resentment can definitely fester and impact the long-term relationship you're going to have with your former partner, particularly if you work together or you have children together. So it's not about just managing right now. It's about managing the next 5, 10, 15, 30 years when your ex-spouse is walking them down your child down the aisle.
Oh, yeah, and this is a perfect segue because my next question was going to be, okay, the dust has settled on the divorce. We've come to an agreement. We've filed all those documents. It's kumbaya, and we are all moving on with our lives. So what advice do you offer to individuals after the divorce is settled to rebuild, like financial understanding, prevent future conflicts, things of that nature in the future?
When you're looking at this from a conflict perspective with your former partner, this is what I call the restore phase. So in conflict management, you have mitigation, which is to avoid the conflict in the first place. There's resolution, which is dealing with the problem once it arises. And then there's restoration. This is about what does the relationship look like? What does our future look like together after the conflict is over? So this fits nicely into that restoration phase. With that said, really taking a look at how you want that relationship with your former partner to look like. Do you want to both be sitting in the stands at the Little League game cheering on the child? Is this what you want to see? Do you want to have those relaxed conversations about education and where the child is going for education and who's going to pay and what about extracurricular activities? You've really got to think about this, because what you do now during the conflict is going to impact how you're able to restore it afterwards. If you were a burdened backpack and took on all those emotions, you're going to have potentially a lot of resentment. If you were a hot reactor and just went for the jugular, you're going to reap what you sow.
Yeah.
That relationship is going to be very difficult to restore afterwards.
And how do you not carry that into future relationships either, right? Like, what is, because a lot of people that we are relatively young and they're on their first marriage is ending, but new relationships will blossom over time, and they're going to, how do we not carry that same conflict into the new relationship? And I guess, is that even possible?
I think it's very possible. My philosophy, and you see this in Smart Conflict, my philosophy is most of the conflict is coming from our narratives. The story we're telling ourselves about the situation and the bad habits we're carrying from our past. However we learn to deal with conflict, what our interpretations are of conflict and certain situations, what our judgment is on certain things. The more you become aware of the habits that you carry. And some of these habits are great. Some of these habits are really, really good. Some of them not so great. The more you become aware of these habits, the more you can change them and morph them as you move forward. I mean, I got married for the first time very, very young, and there were a lot of habits that I had no clue about that really had to be addressed in the beginning of my second marriage. Probably should have been before that, but in the beginning of my second marriage, it was that self-development piece, that self-awareness piece of this is not going to work. I just stood up and said, I'm going to love and respect and walk with this person for the rest of my life. And I can't do that if I'm tearing them down, or if I'm shutting myself down, or if I'm not, investing in them emotionally with empathy. So that's my take on that.
Awesome. All right. Carte blanche, right? This is the open mic session of our podcast here. I always like to ask people, like, what is the overarching message? I mean, I love to learn more about the book that you authored, and how our listeners can kind of glean some information from the book and some tips and tricks. So, like, what carte blanche here as far as what you have to share. I could go on all day long about conflict resolution, especially being a mediator, and how fascinating it is to me. But this is a very short podcast, so I want to give you some free time here to just indulge us with your wisdom.
The one concept that I think I want to wrap with a bow and slide across the proverbial table here is take a look at your definition of conflict. Conflict is not inherently bad. It dredges up a lot of emotions. Our interpretations of it sometimes are a little askew, but conflict, simply put, is just a difference of perspective. And when you can come together and join those perspectives together, this is where that out-of-the-box thinking occurs, because you're looking beyond your perspective. So if you can take your concept of conflict and change it into a concept of curiosity. So what is your perspective, Jamie? How do you look at this? What are you thinking? How do you want the future to look? If I can respond with curiosity as opposed to an emotional load, whatever that emotional load is, because we all have different ones, I think it changes the dynamic of conflict a great deal.
I've never heard that curiosity component mentioned before. Asking questions and like trying to understand what the other side is thinking. I've never really thought about it that way, right? I mean, I guess in some respects, so we do this in the work that we do, and maybe it's just a natural thing in some cases, but I'm already thinking about situations in my own life where I have not done that, and the conflict has just continued or even escalated.
Very much so. There's a basic human need to be heard, and as mediators, we see this all the time. I mean, we point it out. Did you hear the other person say this? We give them that opportunity and that space to hear what the other person is saying, and curiosity does that. What are you saying? Well, what do you mean by this term? It gives us that opportunity to be heard, hear the other person, and then have understanding. I cannot tell you how many times I've tried to stop people from cutting the other person off in mid-sentence. It's like, oh, I want to answer you right now. No, whoa. If you're not understanding what the other person is saying, it's very, very hard to come to a point where you can move forward together.
I've been through some training recently, and I'm thinking about some experiences that I've had, not only personally, but I see clients and having these conversations. A lot of the communication that we have with our ex-spouse or soon-to-be ex-spouse is via email, text message, and what have you. And what I've always tried to do is be brief and be gone. No more than 3 sentences. This is how I'm going to respond to you. Here are the facts, Jack, and we're moving on with our life, right? In my own experience, I do that, and I'm an open book here. I'll share about my experience, right? So I will respond with I respond with a 3-sentence email, all the information necessary. Sometimes doesn't even need a response, and then the response that was received back is war and peace about all the things that you've done, that you're a jerk, you're this, you're that, and so on and so forth. And a lot of the people that I talk with, because 99% of the clients we work with are women, and there's a lot, and this doesn't mean that women are the only emotional ones, right? But they're the ones that absorb a lot of this emotion, right? And because of women are emotional creatures, and just I think by nature, right? I'm not trying to be sexist here, but I think like that's that's just in my experience what I see. And so, and I always tell them like, you need to now be the CEO of Cat Incorporated. You are now the CEO of your own company, and you're going to treat this like a business transaction and be very pragmatic, practical, and very brief in your responses. Is that the right way to go about doing this? Like, what am I missing? Am I missing anything here? Are there any other thoughts that you have around responding that's the type of conflict that you're dealing with on a regular basis?
So if it's huge conflict, absolutely move to text and email. That way you have a record of it. And you're absolutely right. Stay short, sweet, and to the point. The one caveat I kind of want to put on here is no matter the message coming or going, it's not your tone. If you're sending that message, it's not your tone that the other person is reading. The other person is reading their tone put on your words. So if they don't like you right now, that's the tone they're reading in that message. They're not reading it as, yeah, you can pick up the kids at 6. It's, yeah, you can't pick them up until 6 is how it's coming across.
Yeah. Because you're a narcissist, because you're a jerk, because you do this thing, because you had an affair, because you have a baby, like all the like, and then it's blah 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 blah, and nothing ever get. And then the only thing that happens is both sides get frustrated and the kids suffer.
Precisely. So when we're talking about conflict, I try to push folks into doing this in person if it's safe, or on video conference, that kind of thing. That way you get tone of voice, facial expressions, body language, that all goes along with that. So you actually can pick up the tone with which it's intended. Once we start diving into emails and texts, it can get a little shaky just because of that tonality, and you're missing, 90% of the message.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because you can't read the body language in a text message, right? But it's also very important to document this stuff because, again, going back to my conversation just a moment, my comments just a moment ago, it's someday your words can be put on the projector in the court of law for all the world to see, and you better make sure that you're not going to embarrass yourself. So that's all I'll say about that. But I really appreciate this conversation. It was awesome. You've given, in this small amount of time, you've given us so much to think about. I've already gleaned a lot of information, a lot of tips and tricks for myself in my own personal situation, and I'll be sharing and imparting with other folks that I work with moving forward. So for our listeners, if they want to get in touch with you, they want to learn how to work with you, they want to learn about your coaching, so on and so forth. And let's talk about the book too. So where can people, reach out to you, and how do they get a copy of your book?
The book's now available on Amazon in paperback, hardcover, and on Kindle. And you can reach me. The best place to reach me is www.smartconflictbook.com. And I do a lot of my social media work on LinkedIn. So feel free to follow me or give me a connection request. I'd be happy to link up with you there.
Awesome. Thanks again for all of your time. Listeners, don't worry if you're driving or you're not in a spot to jot down this information. It's all going to be in the show notes. All the links to her socials and the book and everything else will be in the show notes for you. I appreciate everyone's time today. Kat, love the conversation. Thanks so much for being a part of this. And for those of you that are listening that need some help from a financial planning perspective, or trying to learn more about the intricacies of your finances during divorce, or need help mediating a divorce, my team and I are ready to help. You can reach us at allegiantds.com. That's our website. All of our contact information is there. Free consultations are available to anybody that is listening and tuning in. So don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. We're going to have more amazing conversations like this coming up. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon.